I want to discuss some breaking news this morning. It actually happened for once, which is that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is flying into Britain today to see Rishi Sunak. Now, Number 10 just confirmed it this morning, Ben, a little while ago. So what's the reason for this? Is the Prime Minister's poll rating so low he's having to ship in the leaders of other nations now?
It's very interesting, isn't it, that Zelensky is coming. It's his first visit to the UK since Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th last year. And we understand that he's going to meet Rishi Sunak at Number 10, and then he'll quite likely head to Parliament, perhaps to watch Prime Minister's questions. And then we understand that he'll address Parliament, probably in Westminster Hall, I'd have thought, sometime after lunch, maybe about 1 o'clock. And then from there, I think it's quite likely he'll probably head down to the southwest, to the West Country, where of course Ukrainian troops are training on British tanks and training with British military, so they can take those skills back to war-torn Ukraine and use them to defend their homeland against the Russians.
Right, and I imagine this is obviously it's good news for the Ukrainians, but I imagine it's going to become nice headlines for Rishi Sunak as well, isn't it?
Yes, it will. Yeah, Boris Johnson has a fantastic relationship with President Zelensky, and to be fair to Boris Johnson, he was sort of widely acknowledged as having led the West response and stayed as close as any ally to Ukraine. Liz Truss, obviously, she wasn't there very long, but she also carried on Britain's alliance with Ukraine, and now Rishi Sunak's doing that. And there's some interesting lines out of what Number 10 has said this morning, that Rishi Sunak is going to be announcing some training for Ukrainian fighter pilots so that they can get used to using NATO standard fighter aircraft. Now, of course, last week we were talking about how Boris Johnson had used a speech to the Atlantic Council think tank in Washington to say that the West should be sending fighter planes to Ukraine. So if they're training Ukrainian airmen to fly such planes, then of course it does open the door to questions about whether or not the West will end up supplying aircraft. So I think in the coming months, we could actually expect to see that.
Yeah, it's certainly something that they can worry Putin with. I have to wait and see, of course, whether Boris Johnson turns up and also wants his picture taken with Zelensky. Can't seem to probably avoid it. Now, Mike spotted the same thing as me. At least when Boris was in trouble, he went to the trouble of going to Ukraine. Rishi has foreign leaders shipped in instead. Ask us your questions about it, everybody. What do you think about Zelensky's trip to Parliament? Is it wise? Is it too soon? Is he going to get the full Nelson Mandela treatment if he gives a speech in Parliament, Westminster Hall? We'll have to wait and see, won't we?